Hi, it's Alistair at Electric Scotland. It's me doing my introduction to my newsletter for September 14th, 2018. Essentially, the stories this week, if you actually looked at my newsfeed, I think maybe I told you last week, but I used to put the news stories on the index page of my site. Now I've got a link, and when you click the link you go to a dedicated page that just gives you the news stories. And I've got a whole ton of them up there. I've only picked maybe only 10% of the stories that go into the news feed actually go into the newsletter, maybe 20% depending. But certainly there's a lot more in the actual news feed on the site. And I've got a link in my newsletter to that page, so if you want to bookmark it, you can, because I usually put news throughout the day. Normally I'm starting work around about 10, 11 o'clock, normally on a Eastern Standard Time here in Canada. And usually that's one of the first things I do after I deal with emails. I start to look at the news stories and start putting stuff up then. And then I will usually do another batch of them around about 11 o'clock at night, just seeing what's happening around the world and put more up then. So at least twice a day I'm putting stuff up. Okay, the big news cycle, of course, is this Parliament's now fully back. There's a lot of stories going on about Brexit and pretty horrible stories going up about Chequers and Theresa May and everything. I think I just want to recollect here, by the way, that when we voted to leave the EU, we did it by 52 to 48%. Now, that's a significant win, but it's by no means a great win. But if you think of all the fear stories that went on, like the Treasury was forecasting we'd lose 80,000 jobs if we voted to leave, that our exports would collapse, all kinds of problems would happen. I mean, really seriously big fear stories. And the Bank of England told us the same as the Treasury. Prime Minister was telling us the same. Obama famously told us the same. Chief of the International Monetary Fund told us that. Everyone around the world was saying how disastrous it would be for Britain. So the fact that 52% actually voted to leave, despite all of that, was pretty damn significant. And of course in Scotland, not one political party supported leaving. So, you know, we got even more skewed in Scotland than anywhere else, really, because there was no competing voices in Scotland. So, if you take that into account and then look what's happened since we voted, all of the fear stories, and I mean genuinely all of them, have been proved to be absolute rubbish. We've never done so well since we voted to leave the EU. I mean, our employment is the highest it's been, unemployment the lowest it's been. We're attracting more money in inward investment than we've ever done. Our exports are up. Certainly exports to the EU are down, and our exports to the rest of the world are up. I mean, every economic look, I mean, our balance of payments is the best it's been ever. Our debt is reducing. I mean, every single parameter you could possibly look at is doing better since we voted to leave. Now, if you take that all into account and look what's happening today, every newspaper, the very biased BBC, who we know is anti-Brexit and anti-Trump, you know, I mean, there's so many stories going around about how this is going to happen to us if we get a no deal and all this kind of stuff. And of course, Theresa May is a massive, massive fudge, decided she'd promote her own Chequers deal. And she basically took the advice of Ollie Roberts, the civil servant, and we know civil servants are anti-Brexit. But she's an idiot, that woman. I mean, a genuine idiot and a traitor to this country. She's no confidence in our business people. Yet our business people are doing amazing things out there in the world. We're world leaders in all kinds of fields. Britain's doing great. We should be so proud of Britain. But we don't seem to be able to do that. Well, there's doom, gloom and despondency going on. It just makes me really sick when I pick up the newspaper yet again or read another BBC article that's poo-pooing us. Believe you me, we're a very strong country and we've got a lot of soft power around the world that makes a huge difference to us. So Britain will do very well outside of the EU, and I say even with no deal, but I've got to tell you, being practical about it, there is on the table that Canada deal. If we could get the same deal as Canada, and because we've been in the EU for 40 years, you would think it wouldn't be too much to ask to get a little bit better deal than what Canada got. I mean, that's the deal we should go to. At least we'd be out, we're free to trade with the rest of the world, instead of this Theresa May, so-called Prime Minister, who's a traitor to this country, and I will say it deliberately. I believe she's a traitor to Britain. She's no faith in the British people at all, that woman. She wants to stay in, governed by the European Court of Justice. She wants to stay in the single market where we won't be able to do free trade deals with us. I mean, it's pathetic. She needs to change her mind. She needs to wake up and realise that Chequers deal is just dead, and she needs to rethink. I mean, the only reason she's there is the Tory party can't find anyone else that would be a clear winner in a leadership contest. She's the worst of a bad lot, basically. But I tell you this much, I think Boris Johnson would do a lot better. A lot of people don't like him, but I've got to tell you, his heart's in the right place. And he knows how to manage. I mean, he was the mayor of London for many years. And he was great at promoting London. But not only that, he knew to stay out the way, and he appointed people that could actually run individual parts of his government there for running London. So he knows to get out of the way and pick the right people that can do the job well. So actually, I think he would do extremely well as Prime Minister. I think Jacob Rees-Mogg would be another one that would do really, really well as well. But, he said he doesn't want to be Prime Minister. But still, I think these are two outstanding people that stand up for Britain and I'm proud of Britain. And we should be proud of Britain. But so many people, for some reason, aren't. So anyway, all that's been pouring out. And out of that, we're now looking at maybe more likely to come out with a no deal. But the Economists for Free Trade have just put out a major paper this week about how Britain would perform under WTO rules if we came out with a no deal. And quite frankly, we'd save, was it 39 billion we wouldn't be paying to the EU? I mean, 39 billion, that's a lot of money. Why would we want to give it to the EU, especially if we can't get a decent deal out of them? I mean, I'm just gobsmacked and astonished at the stupidity of much of the media and so much of the chattering class that goes on. If you're a young person, your future's going to be much better outside of the EU. I mean, think of it, we can do deals with the CANZ countries, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. We're all under the Queen. We all speak the same language, the same kind of parliament, same kind of ideas on free trade. We're so similar, it isn't true. And there's wonderful countries, wonderful scenery is beautiful. I mean, that would be the start, and we can do a great deal with the USA. I mean, don't forget Trump. I know a lot of people hate Trump, but at the end of the day, you've got to see where Trump's coming from. He's a businessman, he's not a politician. And he wants to, all he sees is so many people have got massive trade surpluses with the USA, which is why they've got a huge deficit going. And he simply wants to rectify that. He wants better deals so that America can compete better and hopefully have a bit of a surplus rather than these massive trade deficits that they've got. So he's fighting economically for his country. Good on him, I say. But so many people are poo-pooing him. It's ridiculous, to be honest. He just wants a good deal for the USA, and that's why a lot of people voted him in, and that's why they still back him today, because he's actually kept his word, unlike most presidents who never ever kept their word on what they campaigned on. But he has kept his word, and all I can say is good on him. And he wants to do a good free trade deal with us, but if we stick with the European Union single market, on common rules as it were, we won't be able to do a free trade deal with them. So, Theresa May needs to go. She needs to get out. She needs to resign and do the decent thing, because she's clearly incapable of taking us forward. That's my view. Anyway, there you go. That's my little harangue for today. It's just that I'm so tired of seeing the media and everyone putting us down all the time. We're clever people in Britain. A lot of us are damn good business people. We can do really well. Okay, the first story I've got for you is Smacking Ban Bill published at Holyrood. This is the bill to ban the smacking of children. And it's likely to pass, I would say. The next story is Disney Delight on the streets of Stornoway. I came across the Stornoway Gazette just the other day. And they've actually got some very good stories. This first one, as I say, is Disney Delight on the streets of Stornoway. The wonder of Disney came to Stornoway this afternoon thanks to the Western Isles Lifestyle Lottery. And there's some really great pictures there, seeing the kids dressed up in Disney outfits and stuff. Then another one from the same source is celebrating 200 years of civil engineering in Scotland. It says the Institution of Civil Engineers in Scotland celebrates its 200th anniversary this year. The organisation is keen to open our eyes to the innovations its unsung heroes have helped to design, create and continues to maintain. Good article, that. And the other one that I got from the same source was Enjoy an Adventure on Scotland's Storybook Trail. It says several years ago it was feared electronic devices would soon replace paper and hardback books in the nation's hearts. But this is proving not to be the case. Again, another really good story. And then the next one I have is from the Sunday Post. It's From Sands to Standing Stones, Orkney is an oasis of attractions. I said, what would make the Isle a holidays isle? An oasis awash with epic sandy beaches, or one swimming with historic sights, cute villages and bountiful wildlife? Yeah, that's Orkney. And I remember I went to Orkney on a kind of 2-day stay once a year for 7 years. And I always look forward to going to Orkney. Great whiskey, Highland Park there, you can go around the distillery, Orkney cheese is brilliant. But not only that, I mean, there are great things to see in Orkney, but while I was there, I never knew anything about these ancient historic sites like Maze How and all that kind of stuff. And stuff on the Roth Begba. It's just fantastic, Orkney. And frankly, you could spend 2 weeks there. And while I was there, just out Stromness, I found a lovely white sandy beach. And there wasn't a soul on it. And it was a beautiful evening. And I just spent a couple of hours there on the beach and went for a wee swim. It was brilliant, absolutely marvellous. So I'd certainly recommend if you come to Scotland, make Orkney part of that trip. But even a whole 2-week trip just to Orkney, you'd be surprised at how much you'll enjoy it. Okay, on to the next story is Exiting the EU. It's some factual background to where we are now. It's just a small article from John Redwood, and it's just saying how do we get here, where are we at the moment. So it's quite a neat summary. And then the next story is why a world trade deal, Brexit and WTO terms, will be highly advantageous. And this is a summary on Brexit Central of what was in the big complete guide that they've just put out the other day there. And I've also got a link to a world trade deal, which is the complete guide. So you can read the kind of summary position on Brexit Central, and I put a copy of the full guide down on our own website. So you can watch either or read either. Okay, the next story I've got for you is sort Brexit and then rebuild our nation's pride. It says the sooner we leave the European Union the better. That is the conclusion I have reached after talking to my granddaughter, aged 26, who is soon to embark on a career as a fully fledged GP. I quite like the talk about national pride coming back, because we should be hugely proud of what Britain's achieved in the world, not only in history but today. I mean, today our financial sector is amazing, our agriculture section is amazing, our bio section is amazing. I mean, there's so much that we're doing which is world leading right now. I mean, we should be hugely proud of the country. Then a wee story from Canada is the Queen's Diamond Jubilee portrait undertakes a Canada cross-country tour. So I thought that might be a quite interesting story for you to read there. From the Scotsman we get why Scots words like splorch can't be allowed to die. I'm not going to try and pronounce a lot of these words, but there are certain words that are kind of held in the Scottish language, and we just basically don't want to lose them, and this is the article about that. Then from Brexit Central there's a European Research Group publishes guide to keeping the Irish border invisible post-Brexit. This is another of the really big contentious issues of this Brexit is sorting out so there's no hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. So this is a very considered paper which goes in some detail about why they don't think it's a problem and why we can sort it. Then the final story is a new batch of contingency planning documents has been released by the government. As you know, they're working on the basis of these papers, what happens if a no deal comes in. And they did a tranche of papers a couple of weeks back. There's another tranche of them coming this time, so there's a link to see what's going on there. And that's the news stories I picked, but as I say, that must be maybe 10% of what I put up in the in our actual news feed. Tons more on there. And bearing in mind that I usually put stories up from about 10 AM Eastern Standard Time, I usually spend maybe a couple of hours working my way through all that kind of stuff, and then later, maybe 10, 11 o'clock at night, I'll do another tranche through the main news sites that I kind of look at and put maybe more stories up then, but usually these are the times I normally work on that. Excuse me a second while I get this call. Hi, it's Alistair. Yep. Fine, I'm doing a video. Could you move it? Do you want to come this afternoon? Yes. When? Half an hour will be fine. Okay. Okay, cheers, John. Bye. Yeah, that was a phone call I was kind of expecting. I've my air conditioning went, as you probably know, I told you last week, and I've had Handy Brothers round, and I liked their ideas and stuff, so I decided to go ahead with them. But the guy looked at my ductwork, which none of the others did, I might add. Because of that, he thinks I need a better, an extra return up the stairs. So this is a guy that's going to come along and have a look and see if he can fit one, because the trouble with these old houses, it's maybe not that easy to do, so he's going to see if it can be done and give me a quote. So anyway, there's a live incident for you. Oh, and I might add that under the Electric Canadian, which we're now coming on to now, I've actually got a wee section from my Canadian Journal where I've given you some information about me making a decision for the air conditioning unit, and I've worked on guttering, and I've paid off a car loan and done various other things. So I decided I'd update my Canadian Journal to reflect some of these major things that I've been dealing with. Okay, so I'm continuing with Canada's provinces, the Engineering Journal and the Mining Journal. So new volumes have gone out with all three of these publications. I've also got up a report from Oceana Canada. It's about seafood fraud and mislabelling across Canada. Frankly, it's pretty serious stuff. They reckon 44% of our food of the fish is mislabeled. 44%, that's just appalling. So I thought I'd give you a copy of that report. So I downloaded the PDF file, and the link to it, you can read it actually on their site. But I did download it and keep a copy locally here. Because actually, while it's a big situation in Canada, it may well be the same in the UK, the USA, Australia, I don't know. But it would be worth your while maybe double checking on that in your own country. Life and Times of Sir Leonard Tilley. This is Being a Political History of New Brunswick for the Past 70 Years by James Hannay. It was published in 1897. Really interesting story, that. I certainly enjoyed reading it. I remember some time ago I put up a book about Douglas, who was the Lieutenant Governor for New Brunswick, and he took you through that period where they had that horrendous fire that destroyed, I think, half of Fredericton at the time, and massive death toll right through there. And this 70 years covers that period, in actual fact. Then the next story is lithographical views of military operations in Canada. It's under His Excellency Sir John Colborne during the late insurrection, from sketches by Lord Charles Bowcroft, who was a captain in the Royal Regiment, and he's accompanied by notes, historical and descriptive. So quite an interesting wee publication. It's not a big one, but I think because it's not big, you can probably read it quite quickly and get some good information from it. I've also got statistical sketches of Upper Canada. It's for the use of immigrants by a Bax Woodman. It's the third edition, produced in 1833. I often find if it gets to a third edition, you can normally reckon that it's really good. Because usually when they do a third edition, they add more information. But obviously the information that was there before was good enough for people to want to buy a second and now a third one. And then I've got a couple of stories from Conrad Black. One is a NAFTA deal is achievable, which is a lucky thing for Canada, he says, is the first one. The second one is Trump and his enemies. And then to do with Electric Scotland, Duncan McIntyre and the search for Leichhardt. This is a small book, but it's obviously his search for his clan roots back in Scotland and the branch of the McIntyre clan. So if you're a McIntyre, you'll probably find that of interest. Maybe if you're a Wright, you might also find interest. Then I got a one-page story on Father Duncan McNabb, who was a great defender of the native peoples in Australia. So you might like, it's just one page, so you might enjoy reading that. The Reign of Law is by the Duke of Argyll, and it was published in 1868, but it was his 5th edition. If you remember what I say, if you get more and more editions coming out, it's good because it's been more and more successful. So certainly the lawyers amongst you might enjoy that, but anyone else I think would probably be interested. Then I've got an article on the James Hutton Institute. It's they've got a PDF file out which is Women in Science. So I nicked a copy of it, put it up on the site, because I thought you might want to read about the women that are doing well in Scotland in the science field. The next one is Lessons in Combat Service Support Tactical Mobility. It covers the Afghanistan conflict, Falklands War, and operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. It's a monograph by Major Carol D. Clare, who is in transportation. It's published in 1993. But again, this is part of where, because people were reading about the Army and the Navy and the Air Force, but I was getting emails and wanting to know, well, how are they supported? So this is one of these articles that kind of gives you that information. And then I got a small 40-page book. It's Narrative of a Voyage to India. or shipwreck on board the Lady Castlereach, and a description of New South Wales. It's by W.P. Cramp. It was published in 1823. Very interesting wee book that. I quite enjoyed reading that. And then one for New Zealand, an Old Marawatta, on the Wild Days of the West in New Zealand by T. Lindsay Buick. He's a JP. It's published in 1903. I found another book by him actually, and I'll probably put that up next week. It's another area of New Zealand in a similar time period. So, but anyway, you might well enjoy that, especially if you're from New Zealand. Next story is A World Trade Deal. It's the complete guide by economists for free trade, and published this week to explore what an argument with the EU on doing a no deal under WTO terms, or an agreement rather with the EU on a no deal under WTO terms. It's quite a big page, it's about 70 pages, but if you're concerned at all about coming out with a no deal, having to deal under WTO terms, I'd certainly advise you to read that, because I think you'll feel a lot happier. There's a suggestion it would actually be something like £80 billion better off if we did that. And I've got one, Minstrelsy Ancient and Modern, with an historical introduction and notes by William Motherwell. It's in 2 volumes, and the introduction is about 50 odd pages. Huge introduction to it, because there's a lot of poetry in it, but some of the poetry is maybe not quite to your taste, but I think the introduction explains the importance of everything. Then the next one is Border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland post-Brexit. This is another of the really big deals about Brexit, is the fact that what will happen between the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, and this explains why it shouldn't be an issue. And it's done by the European Research Group, and I think it's well worth a read if you're concerned about that area. And then finally, I've got a guidebook to Tomintoul in Banffshire. It's the highest village in Scotland, and I've also added a couple of videos, one on Tomintoul itself, but one share on the Banffshire coastal area. And so that's what I got for Night to Scotland. The story this week is Scottish Agritech Business Intelligence Growth Solutions unveils first vertical indoor facility to revolutionise global horticultural market. Really interesting story there, and it's great because it's a Scottish company with Scottish staff and Scottish researchers. It's Scottish through its whole roots of the company, and what it's doing is just amazing. World leaders there. So I hope you really enjoy that story. Okay, well, that's it, guys and gals. As far as the site goes, I'm hoping to get the postcard program working for next week. Printer friendly, we're almost there. We did a wee test, but unfortunately the file got overwritten. I don't know how, but it did. So we're going to have to recreate it again, but I'm hoping that will be dealt with by next week. And the mailing list, I'm afraid, is still not operational. There's a slight hope it might be later today. If it is, I'll get the newsletter out, or even tomorrow I'll get it out. But failing that, I hope that'll also be fixed by next week. So we're making progress. Our help file is now working again, so might need to edit a few things on it, but at least we're making some progress at last. Okay, well, great talking to you again. Hope you enjoy some of these stories and take time out to research them and read them and whatnot. And as always, I'll put a link to the actual newsletter where you get all the links to the stories I've talked about in this video. Okay, nice talking to you. Take care. Have a good weekend.